Can't you? Oh, can you hear me now? The mic was not on. It is now on. Can you hear me? Buenas noches, buenas tardes. Okay, so we're good now because the mic says on. Okay, awesome. Sorry about that. Um, I am a little warm here and I don't have anything nearby to fan with. Okay. All right. So I was saying how I was surprised when I logged in and how many of you were already here. Um, it's so funny because, as I mentioned to y'all last week, I've never really talked about how I retired at 45 or achieving fire or any of that because I didn't think anybody would find it all that interesting. And y'all have proved that I don't be knowing what I'm talking about because y'all seem to be very interested in this. And um, I don't want to get anybody's hopes up that this is going to be an exciting, riveting conversation. It's going to be very boring, very, very boring. Okay. Um, when we hear like financial independence, retire early, AKA the FIRE movement, it's actually been around for like 30 years, but it still seems to be like something that most people either have never heard of or they have just some vague idea that it means like no Starbucks and riding your bicycle to work. Um, and a lot of people, when you talk about like, oh, I want to retire early, um, most people I've talked to or encountered have kind of felt like, yeah, like that's not something they can't wrap their head around it actually being possible to walk away from a job before our official retirement age, which is 65 at the moment, which is, like where does that number come from? Well, it is possible. There are lots of folks all over the world achieving fire. I did it 3 years ago. I retired when I was 45 and I never made six figures. So, fire is definitely something regular folks can do too. But before we jump into all of that. If you're new here, I want to welcome you to the Picky Girl Nation. We are very excited that you have joined us today. I am the head Picky Girl. My name is actually Adelia Aborishade, but I think most people on the internet do know me as Picky Girl Travels the World. I help Black women, mostly Black women, not exclusively Black women, gain financial confidence so they can do whatever their heart desires, including moving abroad or traveling the world. So, if those are things of interest to you, moving abroad, traveling the world, financial confidence, being able to put your money to work for you and understand it, then you've kind of found the right corner of the internet. You should totally subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications so that the next time I go live, and join us, join the party, join the fun. Okay, excuse me. So, we are going to kind of start very basic. I don't know what I guess 67 is full retirement age when you're thinking about Social Security. Now, I've mentioned this before that Social Security has kind of never figured into my thoughts on retirement because I spent the majority of my career as a public school teacher in the state of Texas, and the districts I worked in did not pay into Social Security. So, unless they're going to give me Social Security based on the money I made from age 15 to 22, which they are not, I've never thought about it. For me, retirement was always going to be about 54 because of how teacher retirement is calculated. Like I was not going to work a minute longer than I had to. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm looking for something to fan with because I'm dying over here. So I don't know. I think 67 is full retirement when it comes to Social Security. Um, but like the United States, I guess that's what we base our retirement age off of. Okay. Okay. So, so yeah, like Social Security never really figured into, so like the idea of working till I was 67, that was already an absolute no for me because I assumed when I started teaching, I thought I was going to teach, I was going to do my 30 years. That would have put me at about 52, 53. I think when I did the math, I needed an extra year. So for me, it was always going to be mid 50s. But I did not teach for 30 years. There's no way in hell I would have been able to do that and remain a sane human being. So, things change. Okay. I had to make myself some notes because the more I thought about having this conversation with y'all, like all of these things came to mind. And then there were several of you who commented on the YouTube post about the things that you wanted to know. And I wanted to make sure I kind of covered everything, but we'll see if I'm able to do that. Okay. All right. So, in my notes, the first thing I want to talk about or clarify is what is FIRE? Okay. At its core, the idea of FIRE, financial independence, retire early, is really about speeding up the timeline for retirement savings. If you think about how we traditionally think about retirement in the United States, you are supposed to, work your job or jobs for the bulk of your adult life. And as we just were having a conversation, at some point in your 60s, you would retire. Um, and so, how much you had to save for that retirement, when you needed to start saving, I think those are one things people don't think a lot about because I feel like, at least based on my experience, there weren't a lot of discussions about that. We knew that, and I say we, I am Gen X. For us, retirement was something I was going to say we saw our grandparents do, but that is not true for me. But it was something at least we picked up from the external culture that was the goal, that at some point in your 60s, give or take, you would be able to leave your job and finally get to do all of those things you wanted to do, like travel and go fishing and spend all day knitting or whatever it is that you wanted to do. um, and the idea of FIRE is really about, why does that have to be later in life? Why not, do all those fun things earlier in your life? And in order to do that, you've got to detach yourself from a traditional job or the need to exchange your time for money. The Where it's unclear where the acronym for FIRE actually came from. But the concept, at least, we know it first was discussed in a book. I don't know if any of y'all have read it, Your Money or Your Life. It was initially published in 1992. That is when you hear, the people on YouTube, Instagram, the blogs, whatever, the FIRE bloggers talk about, kind of the thing that kickstarted it for them. A lot of them will point to that book, Your Money or Your Life. And in that book, it's not a FIRE manual or instruction book, but what it really talks about is changing your relationship with money so that you can achieve financial independence and live a life that aligns with your goals and your values. It's really about fire is about having financial flexibility is the key to having the ultimate flexibility in life. And in order to do that, you really have to step away from the traditional, I work 30, 40 years and I retire in my 60s. Okay. Oh, okay. So somebody has read it. They released kind of a like a updated version, maybe like in the last 5 years, I think. I think so. I can't remember the exact date. Okay. Just looking just looking over here, trying to mark some of these comments so we can come back and talk about them in a little second. Okay. All right. So, yeah. So that's kind of where, that's kind of where that idea came from. Okay. So, um, how do you achieve fire? How do you become financially independent where you don't need a job and you can retire early? Really, It's n it's not complicated. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's not complicated. It is not rocket surgery. You eliminate debt, you build yourself a buffer, you get that "oh shit" money together, you cut out unnecessary, wasteful expenses. Now, how extreme do you wanna cut back on, unnecessary expenses? That is everybody's personal decision, okay? Y'all know me well enough to know that I am over trying to live a life of deprivation, and so I was never gonna sign up for something like that. The big thing about how you achieve FIRE is you have to be saving at least 50% of your income, and you need to do something with it. You need to invest. It's that combination, at least 50% of your income, and invest it. Um, because we've discussed this on this channel. If you've ever had a consultation with me, if you've ever taken any of my courses, you know I say this all the time. Saving is not enough. Simply saving, the math does not math if you are trying to save your way to a life where you don't have to work. You have to do something that is going to grow your income. And so that's investing. And there are many different ways that you could invest. And really, that's that's it. That is how you achieve fire. You do that until you get to what they call your fire number. That is the amount of money that you have invested that if you were to walk away from your employment, this would be enough money to support the lifestyle that you want for the length of time you intend to be retired. Okay. So when I say it's not complicated, you see what I mean. Now, I know some of y'all are like, did she just say what I think she said? Did she say I got to save at least 50% of my income? That might be difficult. Okay. But it's not complicated. Two different things there. Okay. And so we'll talk about what that can look like. Yes, millionaire teacher Andrew Howman. Y'all heard me talk about him before. That is another really good book to read. Okay, I'm just going back through comments, make sure I didn't miss anything I want to mark. Okay, so that's the basics of how you achieve fire. Now, from what I just told y'all, I think you should already be able to tell that fire is not going to be for everybody. Um, if you are somebody who thinks having consumer debt is just a fact of life and it cannot be avoided, you're just always going to have credit card debt, fire is not going to work for you. Okay. If you are somebody who cannot deal with delayed gratification, fire is not going to work. Because again, think about what I said. You are kind of flipping our traditional trajectory on its head. You want to bring the retirement date up a significant amount of years, 30, 20 years earlier, a lot of people. Um, and in order to do that, you can't have everything now. There are some things you have to kind of like, work, not work hard. That is not what I want to say. You've got to kind of focus on, um, you know, keeping costs down, increasing your savings rate for a period of time so that you can get to fire. But if you're like, no, I'm making this money now and I need to spend this money now, then fire is not going to work for you. Okay. All right. So that's the basics of how it works. Now, how do you do this if you are just a regular person like me? Like I told y'all, the only I'm not gonna say the only job. I had multiple teaching jobs, but literally from when I graduated college in 1997 until June 2020, I was a teacher, a specialist, or something in K-12 education. Okay. And y'all already know we don't pay people in that field of work very much money. So, how was I able to do this? Okay. This is going to be the really boring part because it is not sexy and it is not exciting. So my fire story is I kind of think of myself as sort of an I arrived at fire accidentally, because that wasn't necessarily my goal. And if you've watched Rashida Dow's channel, you know that she retired early at 39, and I had interviewed her for my podcast. And she did not, that was not necessarily her goal consciously, that I must reach my fire number by 39. But she did a lot of the things that when she looked around and then looked at the money and did the math and was like, oh, I don't have to go back to work if I don't want to. My story is a little similar, but with a lot less money. Okay. All right. So my fire story kind of begins. I'm gonna I'm I'm very fuzzy on the dates, but I would bet somewhere around 2008, 2010, okay, which wasn't that long ago. Um, I I knew I okay, if we're going to go back in the Wayback Machine, I was not a single person in 2008 and 2010, but I was the person in charge of the family finances. Um, and there was a very pivotal moment in that prior relationship where it became very clear to me that I needed to look out for myself. I believed what a man told me and I thought we was in this together, and then he quickly let me know that no, the money I thought we were saving for retirement was for us, and he was like, no, my name on that account, that's my money. So that moment I was like, oh, okay, I need to handle my money. I need to be better about looking out for me and my money. Okay? So at that point, our finances were pretty much completely separate. So um my journey starts, I was a married person, but I was doing my own thing financially. I came across, and I can't even remember, it's probably because it's like, oh, okay, I have not been really doing much about saving for retirement. I knew that there was a teacher retirement, but I couldn't get a lot of details about like how much money could I expect? Because it was all tied to what did you earn your last 3 years of employment, you know, and there's this whole formula. So I was like, you know what? That's probably not going to be enough. Just like Social Security is generally not enough for most people to retire. So I kind of started on this whole uh, financial journey, learning about investing, how to invest, all that kind of stuff. And in the process of, oh, wait, okay, trade with Cade. I know that. I would have given that advice to anybody. Um, because I was the person in charge of the money, like, I guess I didn't feel the need to keep my money separate, but also, when you get married when you're 19, you're kind of young and stupid. So, yes, you are right. A woman needs to always have her own money, always. And I learned that lesson the hard way. Um, so, in the process of starting this journey of like learning about investing and that kind of stuff, this is, like the height, I think, of blogging. I came across two bloggers, and I'm not really even sure that I can remember how I did that or how I ended up there. Um, but Paula Pant, who y'all have heard me talk about before, and another blogger called he didn't use his real name on his blog. He went by J Money, and J Money's blog was called Budgets Are Sexy. Okay. And Paula Pant's blog was called Afford Anything. And so those blogs still exist. They still have a presence. They're still doing their thing. So I came across those two, and I think a lot of what they were saying or how they were explaining a lot of the things about financing and investing made sense to me. They were talking about really boring things like investing in low cost index funds, set it and forget it. Like, because remember, I've got 3 kids at home. I'm working, I would say, a full-time job, but I don't know if y'all really realize how much uh how many hours teachers work. Plus, I sponsored like all of these clubs and did field trips. So like I ain't have time for things that were like super complicated. Okay. So that resonated with me. Oh, I didn't realize that J Money sold his blog. Okay. Um, so like what they were talking about that resonated with me because I needed something simple. I didn't need anything complex. And so I think it was through their platforms that I first started to hear about FIRE and what it was. And when I initially heard it, I think I'm like a lot of folks, and I was like, well, there's no way in hell that I'm going to be able to retire early. What I was concerned about was, would I be able to retire ever? Because I started to think about, what is the life I want to live? Like, when I think about retirement, what does that look like? And y'all know I went through like from about 2010 to 2014 when I finally got divorced. There was a lot of stuff going on with me, and so it was like, this life ain't the one I want. What does the life I do want, what does that look like? And travel figured into that. I wanted to live in a place where I didn't have to drive. I wanted to be able to easily travel internationally. And when I started to think about, okay, so what does that look like, how much does that cost, I'm looking at the United States and I'm like, I don't know if I can afford to live this life. So for me, retiring early was never a consideration. I just wanted to be able to retire. I didn't want to have to work until I was 80 or until I dropped dead. So, a lot of what I would hear Jay Money and hear Paula Pant talk about, I was like, that's great. I just kind of took the principles of that and was like, okay, I will use that. Like maybe that's how I get to the place that I can make up for getting started investing late. Um, and I can make up for it by applying these principles, but never did was my goal to initially retire early. I just did not think that was in the cards. Um, Seeing what else is in my notes. Yeah. Um, and despite separating our finances, a boy that I used to be married to, we just weren't on the same page when I would like try and bring up like, like investing and finding this stuff out. He had no interest in learning that stuff anyway. So like when folks are married and you've got a partner who is on the same page, this is a whole lot easier to do versus trying to do it yourself, and you are attached to someone who does not believe in delayed gratification, and they're like, oh no, I got to have all the stuff and I got to have it now. Okay. So some of the things that I implemented was living below my means, making sure that I was not spending more money than I made. um, I could not save 50% of my income. I was nowhere near there, but I made a point to save as much as I could. And after having like a little emergency fund to the side, I started investing. So, and this whole idea of aligning, my money with my values, that's what really spoke to me, because I guess it was about 2010. um Again, like I said, I looked around and was like, is this the kind of life I want to live? And one of the big things for me was moving away from the culture of just blind consumption that exists in the United States. So I had already started to like cut back on just buying things just cuz, or like going to Target and checking those end caps to see what was on clearance just cuz. I stopped doing that. And I got very particular, very picky about how I did spend the money that I was going to spend. So all of this stuff kind of comes together. And so I'm just going about my life. I get divorced. Now, one thing that finally getting divorced allowed me to be able to do was to embrace the my inner minimalist, and because I was not contributing to maintaining a much larger household, big house, multiple cars, all of that kind of stuff. I was able to increase my savings rate. I'm trying to think. While I was still teaching in the US, I don't think I got to 50%, but I was probably somewhere in the 40s, because y'all know my number one priority was, do I have money to travel? My hell yeah fund. So maybe had travel not been such a priority, I could have gotten to that point of bumping up my savings rate sooner, but your girl love a trip though. Okay, just seeing. Okay. I'm marking y'all's questions because we're gonna come back to those. Okay. Um Now, okay, Quinn, I am glad you mentioned this. Rent prices. Y'all gotta realize that by the time I got divorced, I'd been married 20 years. When when I did have my own apartment, I was paying like $200 in rent, $300. Um, so when I got back to like seeing what apartment rent was going for, I was like, "Woo!" maybe I need a roommate because this is crazy. So yeah, I had to really, really look at expenses and think about like how that how I was going to to handle those. Um, and so some of y'all know that what was it? Okay, I got divorced in 2014. I left my job in the States in 2016, although it was technically 2015 when I was like, I'm done with this. And I knew then if I wanted to continue to like put money away and do that kind of stuff, I was like, okay, so how is this going to work if you're going to leave this job? Because I was like, if I got to work at Starbucks, I'll do that. What, how was I going to have to adjust my life? So I was very much considering co living, which, if you know me, is not like, or I can remember when I first got divorced, sitting in my apartment, just sitting in the apartment alone in the dark and enjoying being in my own place by myself. So the idea that I would give that up in order to co-live, like that was huge for me. But again, this whole like aligning my values, my goals, my money together, I was like, but this job ain't it no more. So what I got to do to be able to live and not work this job. Okay. So that's what I did. But again, the idea of retiring early was not, I didn't think about that. But, you know, leaving the US, I did think that that was probably going to play a role in my ability to retire. Because in the US, one of the biggest issues is the cost of healthcare. And I just that was always looming in the back of my head, like how much money I got to be able to save to still be able to go to the doctor or do whatever. And I don't know if there is an amount you can save with the way the US health system is structured. So, also because I believe that healthcare is a right and not a privilege, like they believe it is in the United States, I wanted to live in a place where just by being a human being meant I deserved medical care. So, that and a few other reasons led me to leave the US. Again, no early retirement in sight. That was 2016. I took a job at a teeny tiny international school in Honduras. Um, and I had a 2-year contract, but that school was so small. My daughter was in the 10th grade. I believe there were 6 or 7 other sophomores. That gives you some idea how small this school is. And with an enrollment that small, the slightest change in enrollment numbers, the slightest drop in enrollment really wreaks havoc on the budget. I was primarily in a non-teaching role that they needed me for, but they couldn't really afford it. And they didn't, I don't know if they realized that before they hired me, that they couldn't really afford to have me there. And when I say that, y'all, I'm not saying that because they were paying me the big bucks. First of all, nobody moves to Latin America to earn the big bucks. Two, I took a 60% pay cut when I took the job in Honduras. Um, I think, and I was one of the highest paid people who wasn't the director of the school, and I made less than $30,000. Okay, so but I don't think they really could afford to have a unit of employee there that wasn't teaching. So there were some ups and downs with enrollment. They had to restructure things. They came to me in the spring of my first year there and they said, hey, we got to restructure stuff. And here is our new structure. We want you to keep doing this job that you're already doing that covers K, well, actually pre K all the way through 12th. but we also want you to basically be the high school social studies department. And I said, no, thank you. I am not interested in doing that much work. I was already burnt out on being in the classroom. There was no way in hell I was going to do that. And I really had no plan. It's interesting if any of you were teachers or teachers, you know that like there's a certain window of when you can find the best jobs. They let me know this outside of that window. That window had already closed. Was that intentional on their part? I don't know. But I just did not have the energy or the interest to go and try and find another international teaching job. And so I decided I would take the year off. I had started following this lady named Stephanie Perry. Y'all may have heard of her. She was on Instagram as Vicarious. She had just finished up, I think, her adult gap year. I was a frustrated, never got to do study abroad when I was in school kind of person. And so the idea of an adult gap year, um, that really appealed to me. And I was like, you know what? Because despite taking the 60% pay cut, I was still able to save 50%. Now, uh, I didn't, now that 50% wasn't the same as my 50% was before, but yeah. And so I was like, I don't feel like looking for a job. I'll take the year off. And that's when I first started toying with the idea of, am I just taking a gap year? Am I retiring? Like, what is this? Um, and so and part of the reason I could even entertain the idea of retiring was because I was outside of the US and my cost of living was so much less. Um, and I've made no secret of this, that part of the main reason I was able to retire at 45 is because I don't live in the United States. Making the kind of money that I made, retiring in the US at all was questionable. Retiring early, considering how late in the game I just didn't see it happening. So I took that year off and I traveled and I hung out with my dog and I fell in love with Mexico City. And then I came back to reality because my youngest child was getting ready to go to college and her daddy ain't had no money to pay for it. So somebody needed to. And so I went back to work. But having that year off, I was like, okay, I already knew then I wasn't going to work that much longer. Okay. And so this is well, I'm trying to see. How do I want to tell y'all this? Okay. Um, so as I'm like the job in Honduras, I'm leaving that a year early. I'm going to spend this year in Mexico City and I'm trying to decide, could I really retire? I've not been investing very long. And I started to do some math. And this is just very simple basic math because y'all know math ain't my ministry. Using the 4% rule and the rule of 25. Here's the most important thing you need to understand about funding retirement, whether you're retiring early, whether you're just retiring at all. The most important thing you need to understand is, what are your expenses? Because how much money you need to have saved and invested depends totally on what will your expenses be. There are folks like what's her name? Susie Orman, who thinks early retirement, she thinks it is sacrilegious, and she thinks we're all gonna be like poor, broken, homeless. She's will quick to tell you you probably need about $5 to $10 million. Okay. If you take the number of years that you're likely to be retired, how much money you got to be spending a year that you need $5 to $10 million? Um, and so, like, I know some people's version of retirement is I'm going to ball out. I'm going to do all these things I couldn't do. I could not have a retirement budget that was larger than my income when I was working full time. Like, that didn't make sense to me. Like, I've never lived off $100,000 a year. Why am I going to wait till retirement to start doing that? Now, there may be somebody watching this that they're like, girl, that's exactly what I want to do. And that's good for you. I love that for you. How much you're going to need to save to live that life is going to be a very different number than how much I needed to save in order to live the retirement that I wanted. So I started doing some math. The 4% rule, you will hear anybody who talks fire will mention this. This is this the 4% rule says that retirees can withdraw 4% of their portfolio for the first year and then adjust that amount for inflation in future years and not run out of money. How did they come up with this? They studied, I think, portfolios that were like 50% stock, 50% bonds, and basically, given what inflation did, so on and so forth, that you could assume that for a 30-year retirement, you would not outlive your money. Okay. I have a whole lot of money. So I was working on like the 3% rule. I was like, four, I don't feel comfortable. Let me build myself a little leeway in there. And so I did the math with 3% to see, like, with this amount of money I have, if I pulled out 3%, what would that look like? How does that compare to my expenses? I also looked at the rule of 25, which says you need 25 times your annual expenses to fire. Again, that's assuming a retirement of 25 years. So let's say you want your retirement budget is going to be like $40,000 annually. If you follow the rule of 25, you need to have $1 million invested in your portfolio through all of your savings. We're not talking about sitting on cash, because it's important that you have money invested so it can continue to grow while you're not working. Now, when you think about early retirement, if people are retiring in their 30s and 40s, 30-year retirement, 25-year retirement is not going to work. So, as the fire movement has grown, there have been some different calculators that have been developed that let you kind of figure in all kinds of things. And in the description of this video, I have linked some of my favorite fire calculators. So, I started doing some math, and the math kind of was mathing, like something I thought was not going to be possible for a significantly longer period of time all of a sudden became possible. It all depended on what my expenses were going to be. So my my youngest was going to go to college. I needed to be able to pay that. Our plan for her to go to college hinged on me being outside the US so that I could take the foreign earned income exemption, so I could have zero income so she could get financial aid based off of my income. And then, like, I'd kick in some money, that kind of thing. Okay. So, so I went back to work, but having had that taste of freedom, I was like, okay, how can I make this work? And so for the time that I returned to work, I upped my savings rate. It was at least 75%, but it might have gotten as high as 90%. Now, I know when you hear that number, you're thinking like, "Girl, you was living off of 10% of the money you lived." Well, this is it, working for outside the US and having somebody else pay my rent, uh, and my utilities were I lived in a country with very low cost of living, and I was paid not quite what I made. I was making probably what I was bringing home in the States after taxes. But I ain't have to pay rent out of that. I didn't have to pay for insurance. Oh my gosh, I forgot to mention that. When I got divorced and I had to start paying for my own insurance, not only do we not pay teachers but peanuts and ice water, then we charge them $1 million for health care. Oh my gosh. My insurance ate up a significant portion of my paycheck. I did not like that at all. So, living in another country, having those costs taken care of, I lived someplace that was pretty cheap. I was able to ramp up my savings even more so. And then one day I was like, this job is really getting in the way of how I want to live my life. I was really over um having to be somewhere when when somebody else said I had to be there, and not because I got spoiled that year in Mexico where I would just wake up, catch a flight deal and be like, drop the dog off to the sitter and be gone. Um, so I wanted that life back. I knew going into my last year there that I was going to retire and you know, from there. So here's the other thing I want to mention that I discovered um in the early days, or at least my early days of learning about fire. There was a lot of talk about people wanting $1 million, $2 million, $3 million. And yes, in the US, and you want to do more than just sit at home and be on the porch, I could see that. Um, I think that is doable, but I was just at such a point that like, oh, I didn't know. I don't know. I was very, very burnt out at that point in my life. But then as time has gone on and the fire movement has grown, there are multiple types of fire. And so these people who are going to spend somewhere between 40,000 and $200,000 a year in their retired life. Mind you, this is more money than I've ever made. Those people, that's fat fire. That is, I'm going to retire and I'm going to live it up. I did not aspire to. I just aspired to being free. So I was like, I don't have to get to that. And then I heard about something called lean fire. Lean fire is more like your expenses are, this is more for the minimalists in the house, and I am a minimalist. Um, I was like, I could do this. The math really started to math. I think lean fire is considered to be somewhere between 20,000 and $40,000 annually for all of your expenses, especially after having spent time living outside of the United States. That became a real reality. Um, and there's also what is called barista fire, because remember, at its core, the idea behind fire is you want to be able to kind of divest yourself from trading time for work. You want to have more freedom. So what if, let's say, I think barista fire is a real option for folks who might be a little older. This is the idea that you've got money saved up for, like, you've got the money invested and if it continues to do its thing, you'll have enough money. But just kind of to have a little insurance, kind of have a little fun money. You take a little job, like you're a barista or you do something like that. So between this little bitty job that covers kind of like your daily expenses and the money you've got invested in growing, um, that can get you to financial independence, and you can leave this job that maybe you don't really love, you know? Um, and then there's something called coast fire. And that's what I didn't when I did the math, I realized that that's what I was, coast fire. Basically, like I had for the retirement that I had envisioned, what those expenses would be. I had enough money invested that if I didn't touch it and I just let it do its thing, I didn't have to worry about continuing to contribute. So the money I did have, I could do other stuff with. So it's like maybe Coast Fire is more like, I don't hate this job. I can do it. I could make this money. I can do the things I want to do, but I'm not so worried about socking money away and investing. So once I understood that there were these different levels to fire, it became much more doable for me. The last few years that I worked, I just stacked money. And then when June 2020 came, I was like, I'm out. I'm not doing this anymore. I now if you saw the thumbnail for this video, you noticed it said financial independence, relax, and ease. That's the fire that I have achieved. For me, retire early, like, yeah, I wanted to retire and get away from this job that was depleting me. But really, what I was looking for was the financial freedom that I could step away and I could relax and I could take things easy. And so that's the fire that I have achieved, that I've gotten to. Um, just going through and marking some more of these comments because I am behind. Okay. Just marking some of these. So yeah. So that's the basic story of how I did it. I increased my savings rate as high as I could. I invested money, and I know y'all got questions like, "Girl, what you invest in?" We can talk about that. But that's in essence what I did. I kept my expenses as low as possible. When I first got a divorce, a boy I used to be married to was like, you're not gonna buy a house? And I was thinking like, I need to keep my expenses as low as possible. I knew at some point I was going to be bouncing out of the US. So I was not trying to have a house tie me down. That was not part of my bigger plan. Now, on the outside, did I look like did I look like a failure? Maybe. I don't know. But I had my plan and I was working my plan. So I didn't really care what people thought. There were quite a few ladies who also got divorced around the time that I did. And almost every single one of them bought a house. I do not regret not making that choice. Um, so, yeah. All right. So, yeah, I'm just marking. Uh, oh, I know what I wanted to tell y'all. Like, what would I have done different? Because I feel like I came into the game late. So there are some things that I wish I would have done different. I did the best I could with what I knew how to do and what I could learn. Um, hold on, I'm still marking these questions because I'm really, really behind. Okay, so things that I would have done differently, other than the obvious of I wish I would have started sooner. But you live and you learn. I'm not gonna beat myself up from that. The other big thing, like if I had this all to do over again, the biggest thing I would have done, and I really tried to get my daughter to do this when she bought a house, but she wasn't trying to hear me. I would have done house hacking. I would not have bought a single family home. I would have bought either a duplex or a triplex, or I would have gone into looking at a single family home with the idea of, is there a rental unit on it? Or could I rent out a portion of this to help cover my mortgage so that instead of paying a mortgage, I could plow that money into my investments? That's probably, other than starting sooner, because I started late, that's the other big thing that I wish I would have known about and I would have known to do. Okay. Um, so, um, I say 100% yes to this, Kelly. Lowering the cost of living seems to be a huge key in the process, although it's challenging in the US. It is. But if you think about in the US, when people talk about they retire, what do they typically do? They move to some place like Florida. They move to like Idaho. They generally move to places that either have a lower cost of living, maybe that don't have a state income tax. Think about the big family home. How many retirees sell that and then use that money to help fund their retirement? That's something that I didn't initially understand, because a lot of the messaging we get is, okay, you got to live the American dream, you've got to acquire the stuff, you've got to get the house. But like, when I got divorced, we had a house on an acre. It was like 3,600 square feet. Like, when it was just me and gonna be me and him, what we need all that house for? Do y'all know what how much I spent on propane for the propane tank in that house and getting the septic pump? Like, this is why we see older folks downsize when they're getting ready to retire. But that part wasn't getting communicated to me. It was like, you need to have all the stuff, you need to acquire the things. And I did that and I really like it. Okay. All right, so that is my story of how I got to fire. Now, I marked some of y'all's questions, and if y'all have got more questions, throw them in there, and we'll get them answered. I don't, I'm looking at these questions and I don't see it, but I already know this is going to be a question. What did I invest in? This is the really boring part, y'all. Um, I did not invest in individual stocks. I bought low cost ETF index funds like total stock market, total bond market. That's it. And put my money in there and I left it the hell alone. That is literally all I did. Um, Now, is that the only way you can grow your money to get to fire? No. For those of you who are interested in using real estate as part of your fire portfolio, Paula Pant is somebody you definitely want to check out. She and her husband kind of started this financial independence journey. I don't even think they were intentionally doing it. It was just they were so broke, they didn't really have a lot of options. They started house hacking that then grew into acquiring multiple properties, to such a way that she became a millionaire. She even has a course on getting your first rental property and talks about like how what to look for, because when you're buying a house to live in versus you're buying a house as an investment, that's two different things. Anybody who's telling you is that, oh, when you buy a house anytime, like you're buying a house to live in, it's an investment. No, it's shelter. There's a different way you approach purchasing real estate if your intention is to make a profit. um, So yeah. I will also tell you that because I was a public school teacher, I did not have access to a 401k. I did not have access to an employer match. So if you have at your job a 401k, a 403b, or a 457, and there is an employer match, and you are not contributing to get that employer match, you are leaving money on the table, money that could get you out of that job you don't want to work. I didn't have that. Um, I did have access to a 403b, but boy, we really screw teachers over in the United States. We don't pay them anything, uh, unlike other state employees who get either free or near free insurance. Public school teachers don't get that. So I was paying through the nose for health insurance. But also, when it came to retirement investing, if I wanted to do anything outside of teacher retirement, which was automatically taken out of my check, um, basically they sold us off. And by that I mean any kind of financial service company, insurance company that had some kind of product they wanted to shill, whether it was actually beneficial for us or not, the school district would allow them to come talk to us. And if you don't know anything, and we've discussed on this channel how few of us were taught any of these things, like I had to actively go seek out and learn these things out of necessity. Um, there are a lot of people in the financial services who don't give a damn about growing your money. They're just trying to line their pockets. So a lot of the folks who, would come and bring donuts and set up in the teacher's lounge, that's what those people were doing. Luckily, I had enough on the ball not to get sucked into some kind of annuity or like whole life policy thing. And I knew that I at least knew from the little bit of learning I had done that I wanted uh, a true, like, be able to invest in mutual funds or ETFs. I knew that much. And so one thing I did do kind of right, not completely. I opened my 403b at Vanguard. And now the funds that I picked at Vanguard, I had no idea what I was doing. I'd seen on the cover of Money Magazine a couple of fun names, and I was like, okay, I'll get those. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Um, and luckily I picked Vanguard. So, but ultimately I moved away from that because I was not getting an employer match, and a Roth IRA made more sense. I did not have $20,000 or $19,000. I think the contribution limit used to be back then. I didn't have $19,000. So I was like, why not put it in a Roth IRA? At least whatever it grows to, I never have to pay taxes on that. So primarily, my investment portfolio, low cost index funds in a Roth IRA. And I will tell you, the first few years, it was hard for me to come up with $6,000. I don't think I did. Um, Primarily there. And then I've mentioned this here before, and I know somebody asked a question about it. When I left Texas, well, in 2015, when I was like, I'm done with this. I don't care what I got to do, but I ain't doing this no more. I knew that I was never going to teach in the state of Texas again. So when you leave teaching, you can leave your money, and this is just like with any other job. When you leave, you can leave your money in that company's investment retirement thing, or you can roll it over and control it yourself. And everybody I talked to who had left teaching to do more lucrative things had kind of just left the money. And I think most of that's because there wasn't that much money in there, and their new jobs paid lots of money. My new job did not pay lots of money. Um, and so, like, I went through all of the little retirement, like teachers is the end of the year, teachers are getting ready to retire, like ask questions about the plan, all of that. And I kept asking, like, if I leave my money in here and I don't teach another day in my life, how much am I going to get? When can I get this money? And one, they didn't like me asking those questions. And two, I did not like the answers I got. Basically, the state of Texas was going to hold on to my money for at least another 20 years before I could tap into it. I ain't like that. This is at the same time that I am hearing or I'm witnessing the state increase insurance costs on retired teachers. And there are retired teachers saying, I like this increase in insurance is taking my entire annuity. There is no money. And I was like, I don't want that life. Also playing in the back of my head is you know, there are very few industries in which there are still um pensions, okay? But, because the person I used to be married to worked at the post office, but he had come in, like, right when like, he was still gonna get a pension, but really he was doing TSP, the Thrift Savings Plan, um, and there were more and more companies whose were not funded properly, and then, like, if a company goes under and they owe you pension money, like, what happens? There is, I forget the name of it, but there is something the government has that's supposed to then be able to pay out. But generally, if your pension is underfunded and the government steps in, there's no guarantee on how much you are going to get. And this was also at the time I had been seeing some things on the front line about how different states, this is post Enron, remember, how some of the investing decisions that the people in the state were making were not really in my best interest. It was more about, hey, we'll invest with these people because they'll contribute to our campaign, not this is how we make sure we don't lose the money in the Texas teacher retirement. So, so um basically there's the money in my Roth IRA, which is not a lot. I got a little bit of money from basically, oh boy had to buy me out of some of our joint property in the divorce, and he ain't had no money. So I got a quadro from his retirement. So that was my retirement money anyway. So I rolled that over, not $1 million or anything close to that. And so I'm eyeing my Texas teacher retirement money. And so on the one hand, I've got you may not be able to touch this money for 20 years. And there is the question mark of will the state of Texas invest it in such a way that you still get out what you're supposed to? Because the idea of the kind of system they have is I only teach for 30 years, but then I live to be 85, 90, and I pull out more money than I put in. But because I knew I was not going to teach anymore, I would not be making those contributions. So there was a real question of was I really going to get out more than I put in, or was I just going to get out what I put in? And if that's the case, why am I going to wait 20 plus years to be able to touch my money? So I made the choice that I left teaching in public schools, that I withdrew, I rolled over my teacher retirement funds. They only gave me what I contributed plus I think I earned like 6% interest. So that went into a rollover IRA. Again, very boring. I bought a total stock market index ETF and I left it alone. And I let the stock market do what the stock market does. And I looked up one day and was like, "Huh, if I stay outside the US, I could low key be retired." So that's that's that. Okay. So your questions. I thought I just saw one that went past. All right. I'm a steal from Our Black utopia, if you got a question, put a Q in front of it. That helps me see it. Okay. So, that's part of the reason why I don't expect to get Social Security. And that's part of the reason why y'all have heard me talk about when I talk about like applying for residency in other countries, like I'm never going to get a pension because there's no Social Security money for me. And I won't get Texas teacher retirement because I decided, and this was a big risk. I was not very confident that that was the right move. But I just said, at least if I lose all the money, that's on me, you know? And if I gotta get another job or do something else, that's on me. I did not I did not like being at the whims of what the state of Texas was doing. And that may be a result of my own trauma. I am not telling anybody to be like me. I'm just telling y'all my story. You are right. Especially because Texas is a community property state. I was surely entitled to more of his money, but it was more important to me to be free than to fight him over some nickels and dimes. Um, did you pay off your debt prior to saving and investing? Um, I don't believe that you have to do that. I am somebody who believes you can do both. And then even if let's say you've got a lot of debt and you can only invest, and I'm being for real here, 5, 10, $20 when you get paid, I still think it's valuable to invest that 5, 10, $20. So I don't think that you have to pay off all your debt before you invest. Um, I know everyone is different, but what would you say is the length of time to achieve fire without lying to yourself by saying, I can save a certain amount in so many years? It's about expenses. How much is it going to cost you to live the life that you want? Because that's how much money you need to have saved. So if you're like, I really want to be retired by X age, okay, if you can ramp up your savings and investing, but with the projected amount of money that you're going to have, how much is that going to give you for expenses? So that might be barista fire, might be the way that you get to retire. And there's nothing wrong with that because it's really about having freedom and flexibility. So it's gonna come back to the expenses. Um, Folks who want to stay in the US, it is going to take them, they should save more money. Um, I'm a teacher too. Retiring early is something that you don't hear of unless somebody has a spouse with a good job. Very true. Very, very true. It is doable. Now, I had another teacher friend, and earlier when I was saying that if you're somebody who cannot live with delayed gratification, fire is not going to work for you. And so technically she made a little bit more than me when we were teaching because she's a couple of years older than me, and her husband had a job where he made like more money than the both of us combined. However, I'm retired, they aren't. And so it's, even though she had somebody, and I kept saying like, with the amount of money y'all have coming in, you could do X, Y, and Z. But she was like, no, we have to pay for this, and like their kids were in 27 different things. We've got to take this cross country trip. We've got to do this, we've got to do that. And so those were choices. The things she was like, we want to do this now. Okay, that's fine. But that meant that was going to push their timeline of being able to stop working further back. That's a personal choice. But for me, The sooner I was free to do my thing, that was what was better for me. Okay. I don't know if we, I guess we kind of talked about this. Figuring out your fire number. You need to estimate. You need a really good estimate on what will your expenses be. This is why when you start to do your Googles and you start to see who the people are talking about fire, a lot of them left the US or like traveled or like lived in a van or did that kind of stuff because it's about lowering your expenses. So you need to know what your expenses are going to be because that's going to tell you how much you need to save and invest. You can use the 4% rule, the rule of 25. Like I said in the description of this video are some links to some different fire calculators, one of which is uh, how long will the money last? Like you put in this amount, and then based off of other details you put in, they'll tell you this amount of money will last you X number of years. Um, Realizing living abroad was my ticket to early retirement was a game changer. Yeah, it really like I said, I never anticipated being able to retire early. My concern was, am I going to be able to retire? Um, okay. Did you luck out on strong investments with big returns? I bet on the stock market doing what the stock market does. There are folks who chase more actively managed options and in because they're trying to beat the market. I looked at it from a perspective of if I can just get the returns that the stock market gets historically, I'm good. I'm golden. Um, what was it? We had a bull market for quite a few years there. Now, pre 2008, I think I did have some stuff invested in 2008, but I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I don't think I got serious about investing in between 2008 and 2010. Um, and so is it luck? I guess. But I just wanted, and this is the idea behind index investing. I just wanted, I'm not looking to get rich quick. I'm not looking for that one stock that's going to go up 200%. One, I ain't got the time nor the inclination to do the kind of research you need to do to figure out what that stock is. I'm not interested in that. And two, I don't need all the money. I just need enough money. So the stock market just did what it does. The past year or two, the stock market was also doing what it does. Ups and downs come. But if you look at it more in the long term, if I look at the amount of money that I put in, even though my portfolio was down last year, earlier this year, that's from the highest it has ever been. But if I look at the money that I actually put in, I've not lost any of that. I've only quote unquote lost, because we know these are paper losses, they are not real losses, some of the money that I earned by the growth of my investments. So, in case y'all ain't picked up on this, but if you're looking for somebody to tell you how you can get rich quick, this is not that channel. We are into very boring finances around here. Um, let's see. Um, can you talk a little bit more about foreign earned income exclusion and explain how that works? If you are a US citizen or a green card holder and you are outside of the United States earning income, you can exempt about $120,000 of that income from US federal income taxes. Now, How long do you have to be outside the US? Either 330 days a year, that's the physical presence test, or you have to be a bona fide resident of another country. So I consider myself to be a bona fide resident of Mexico. That is where my life is. So I could be in the US more than 35 days a year and still qualify. But because I did not make $120,000, the money I did make got exempted from federal income taxes. And because I lived in the state of Texas, I did not have to pay state income taxes either. So for income purposes, like when they're looking at financial aid, my income was zero. The downside of that is with zero income, I couldn't contribute to a Roth IRA either. Um, Vegas Star Design. You may also, a few weeks ago, we talked to Makara, who is an international tax strategist, and she talked a little bit more detail about that. It's called US Taxes for Expats, I think. It was earlier this month. It was in the month of May. Might want to check that out. Okay. Some lean fire folks. Yeah, I was like, I could do lean fire. I don't have to have all the money. How do you get over the fear of the stock market crashing and destroying all of your investments? I don't know that I have that fear, but I can understand why someone would. Like we all learned about in school the crash of 1929. Um, but a lot of those folks who lost their shirt borrowed on margin. Now, they took out loans to invest and didn't have any money to back that up. But if you look at history since then, there are ups and there are downs. And so this is why it's important to have a diversified portfolio so that when the things that go down, you've got other stuff in your portfolio that either stays where it is or goes up, so that it is it's the same thing of don't put all your eggs in one basket. So this is when I hear folks talk about like, yeah, I took all of my retirement money and I put it in crypto. That makes me that makes me cringe, okay? Because they've basically put all of their eggs in a highly volatile basket. So you do the best you can. You diversify between stocks and bonds. You make sure you have diversification across industries. Don't be all in tech, like have a tech stock fund. And I don't even know if there is a tech bond fund, but all of your money is in tech because you think like tech brings a lot of money in. Don't do that. You want to diversify as much as you can, but I'm also a believer in I don't worry about things I don't have control over. What I can control is the actions that I take. I cannot control the greater stock market. Part of the reason that I invest in the stock market is because based on its history, it feels like it will continue to do that sort of thing. But it we all of this can go to shit tomorrow, but I can't control that. So I don't worry about that. I worry about what I could control. And let's say it does all crash. Let's say it does. Where does that leave me? Do I have a place to stay? Do I have people I can stay with? Do I have skills that can make me money? As long as the answers to those questions are yes, I'm not going to worry too much about it. Because what does worrying do? It doesn't fix anything, and it takes away from your peace and enjoyment today. And I told y'all, financial independence, retire in ease. That's what I'm trying to do. Why would you invest in the stock market if it's so iffy? You'd lose a chunk of it unless you did conservative investing. Um, the only way to gain wealth is to gamble. And I'm using gamble in quotes. I don't mean like literal gambling, but you've got to take a chance. The biggest returns come with risk. You don't take any risk. Like you're like, oh, banks are failing. The stock market is iffy. I'm gonna put this money under my mattress, and then we get hit with 8% inflation. You've lost money. You've lost spending power. So if you want to grow your money, because you cannot save to wealth, you can't. If you have to invest. Now, if for you personally, and I'm not talking necessarily to Rosalind, but if there is somebody watching this that they're like, yeah, I think the stock market is too iffy, invest in something else. Invest in real estate. Invest in, I don't know, sports memorabilia. But you have to invest in something. That's the only way that your money can grow without you working more. And for me, because I do not want to work more, I also do not want to be a landlord. And there are other ways to invest beyond being a landlord. I am aware of that. Um, but for me, this was the lowest barrier to entry because, as we've already established, I was a public school teacher who barely had two nickels to rub together. So for me, this was the easiest way to get my money in a place where it could grow and start to work for me. Um, what age did I start investing? Somewhere between 30 and 35. I was late to the game. Um, how did you balance savings goals while traveling frequently? Uh, there's a video I did, and it is linked below in the description called, what is it called? You don't need to budget, which I do the anti budget. I prioritized savings for retirement and saving for travel. Everything else, that was extra. I made sure I had money for those things. So that meant like maybe I didn't have cable. Okay, I had a Roku and I had somebody who gave me their Netflix password. I know that's not a thing anymore, but at the time it was. Like I got on one of those discount mobile carriers because hell no, there was no way I was going to be paying $100 a month for cell phone service. I did things like that to lower my other expenses because the things that came off the top in my budget was the money for my travel fund and the money for my savings and investing. So I prioritize those things over everything else. Um, this is one of the reasons why I think I resonated so much with what Paula Pant talks about is because she says you can afford anything, not everything. And so, and this goes back to the book, Your Money or Your Life. What is the most important thing? And for me, that was travel. So that became my priority. And there were other things like I didn't eat out a whole lot. I cooked. I know, shocker. Now I don't remember how I did any of that. All that cooking has gone out of my brain. But once upon a time, I cooked in and didn't eat out that much because that meant I had money to travel. So that's how I did that. Okay. Are you currently taking less than 4% of your investments? Do you take more than 4% when adjusting for inflation? At the moment, I am not touching that money. Now, when I retired, I intended to. But then I ended up going into business for myself, which I did not expect to happen. I thought I might pick up like um, some consulting gigs because I used to kind of do that when I taught. I thought I would do that kind of thing. And I did pick up a few. And I discovered that even consulting, I still had to like working at a certain time and I ain't like that. So my intention was to start pulling on that money, but so far I have not had to. So I'm just letting it do what it does. Um, We talk about like lifestyle creep. I could have easily continued with the plan to tap into that money, and then plus the money I make for my business. I could have done both of those and been out here balling, but uh, I'd rather leave my money there to do its thing until I really do need it. When should I start investing? Yesterday. Y'all know I am I love to misquote that Chinese proverb of the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the second best time is today. I feel 100% that that applies to investing as well. If you are not currently investing, you should start. Whether it's real estate, it's sports memorabilia, it's leather goods, it's the stock market. You should be investing in something. Um, is it too late for a 53-year-old to achieve fire? I don't know. Again, it's going to go back to what are the expenses that you expect in the life that you want to lead. If it's a choice between never retiring and retiring, let's say at 68, to me, that's still a win. I don't want to get all caught up on the retire early piece because really what this is all about is financial independence. And that is something that when you think about how we exist in the capitalist system in the United States, that's never the focus of the indoctrination we receive. It's about earning more to consume more. So if y'all want, just ignore the RE. It's really about financial independence. And then the question becomes, when can I achieve financial independence? And again, that goes back to your expenses. So to answer your question, Amma, is it too late? I don't think so. I think maybe if you had always dreamed of or envisioned, I would be done working by 55. And if at 53 you haven't invested anything, that is a very ambitious goal. But I don't think it's too late. I think you might just need to tweak that goal a little bit if that's the case. Oops. Okay. Mm, okay. Lady has a question here. I have a Roth IRA, but haven't contributed yet. I added a brokerage account and a cash management account too. Are brokerage accounts and money management accounts a good move? Okay. A brokerage account is an investing account. A money management account is not a brokerage account. So I have my investments spread over a rollover IRA, a Roth IRA, and a brokerage account because um, for a variety of reasons. I talked about how I rolled over my teacher retirement. I got some old boys retirement money. I had the Roth IRA because, you know, I didn't have a 401k. I didn't have a match from an employer. And I got the brokerage account because when I was outside the United States and exempting all of my income, I could not contribute to a Roth. I can't contribute to an IRA if I don't have earned income. A brokerage account doesn't have any of those restrictions. So, and a lot of the people you'll hear talk about who are going for fire, because think about this, your 401k and your IRA both have age requirements. You need to be 59 and a half before you touch that money. Well, if you retire at 49, and you want to start living off money, you can't pull money out of there exactly without having a penalty. With the Roth IRA, it's a little different, but I don't want to get into that right now. But if you've got money in a brokerage account, you can take that out, do whatever you want with it. So having the combination of accounts um, is good from a tax perspective. It's also good from if you need to, when you need to access that money. based off of when you retire. So, I have all 3 accounts, and a lot of folks who retire early, because right now, I couldn't any of the money from my Texas teacher retirement that is in a rollover IRA, I can't touch that money right now because 'cause I'm not 59 and a half. So, the money I would tap would be some of the money in the Roth and then the money in my brokerage account. Um, let's see. I don't know what this conversation was in, but in case y'all are watching this and you don't know, part of the work that I do, I mentioned at the very beginning, is I help Black women become financially confident enough to master their money. And one of the ways I do that is by hosting the Get Started Investing Challenge. Now, do I have a link for that? I bet you I don't. I do not. I'm so ill prepared. But if you go to getstartedinvestingchallenge.com, I believe there is a link in the description below. So if you're hearing me say this and you're like, oh, I sure do need to be investing and I don't know anything, take Teresa's advice. It was quite insightful for an investment scaredy cat like me. So, yes, I do host that challenge. There will be another one in July. And if hearing this conversation has gotten you to thinking about your level of financial literacy and financial confidence in the greater perspective, and you're like, there's a lot of stuff I don't know, the Financial Confidence Academy might be the way to go for you. Registration is not open, but it is getting ready to open. There is a link in the description. You can get on the wait list, financialconfidenceacademy.com. So, let's see. Um, okay. Ah, I have been looking at the starred things, but yay. Your challenge started me on my investment journey. That's what I am here to do. That's what I want to get those of you. Now, the Get Started Investing Challenge is specifically and exclusively for Black women, and there is a reason for that. But the Financial Confidence Academy is open to other folks. But yes, I want to be I'm like your gateway drug into all of this financial stuff. Okay, so let's see. There are more questions here. There are actually a gajillion comments that y'all got to give me a moment to catch up on while I was looking at the starred questions. Uh, hold on, be patient with me, y'all. I'm trying to go back to where I left off. Um, was I here? Okay. All right. I think I found myself. Okay. Um, when I do get ready to start pulling some of that money, there's a whole science to deciding which of the accounts to pull from and how much and all of that. Um, but the basis of TJ's question is really, do you pull out the same amount per month, or do you pull out like a year at a time? When I do this, it'll probably be a year at a time. Um, I cannot contribute to, as long as I'm doing the FEIE, I cannot contribute to the Roth IRA, to any IRA, but I do have my brokerage account that I still invest in. Um, okay. Good question, Sherry. Did you meet with a fiduciary to get the initial investments? No. Um, Now, whether I've thought about this, because a lot of the reason I didn't is because based off of the research I did and the reading I did, most fiduciaries, and by that, that's somebody who is not who's supposed to put my financial well-being ahead of their own. Like in theory, they won't try and sell me products just because they'll make money. They will recommend things because it makes sense for me. If you're going to pay somebody, it needs to be fee only, and they need to be your fiduciary. A lot of what that person would tell me, I think, would be very similar to what I do on my own, but also I want to be the one pulling the strings. I am not opposed to getting advice, but you will probably never hear me talk about, oh, this is my investment manager or my wealth manager or whatever. 'Cause not that I got wealth, but I want to be the one calling the shots. And I think this goes back to Sabongale's question about like, how do you get over the fear? I think for me, if I'm the one who messes up, I can live with that. I can bet on me, I can gamble on myself. But if somebody else messes up my money, I got real problem with that. So I have not met with anybody because if I'm not looking for a actively managed portfolio, they're pretty much going to tell me the same thing that I already know. Um, let's see. This that Tamara or yeah, Tamara says, we are lucky to live in a time where you can buy fractional shares. We are. This is why when I say you can invest with like $5, you can because of fractional shares. You don't have to like, I don't know what Amazon is trading for now, but I know before the stock split, it was like $3,000 for a single share. In the old days you could have only bought a single share or whole share, so you would have needed at least $3,000. In the world we live in now, you can buy $5 worth of Amazon stock if that's what you want to do. um I am ready to receive my pension this birthday. Should I take it or wait till I'm 65? Take the money, early invest. Here's the question: are you going to get more money if you wait until you're 65? How much more money? How much is that worth to you? Um, this is one of the questions a lot of people ask about, like, when should I take Social Security? And there are people who these are people who like to maximize, and they're like, look, if I can delay taking my Social Security until I'm 70, I'm going to get so much more money out of the game. Yes, and you could drop dead at 63. So I don't know. It's kind of a personal thing. How do you feel about that? What feels good to you? Does it feel good for you to be like, hey, I worked, I lived this long, I'm gonna take my money now? Uh, or are you like, oh, that extra I could get by take waiting till 65? That's gonna make a world of difference. How do you feel? Because I don't think there is a one size fits all answer to that. Kim, it's interesting that you make this comment that people say they want to leave employment, but they're not willing to make any sacrifices to get out. I was just having this conversation with a friend, and it was talking about this, but also talking about moving abroad. Um, for me personally, the freedom that I would get from being financially independent, the freedom I would get from being outside the US, like was that was number one for me. So everything else fell into place. And did I make sacrifices? I guess to somebody on the outside, it might look that way, but to me, it was like I just do this because that's one step to achieving the goal, achieving the dream. Um, Okay, Monica, this is what I'm trying to tell people. Financial advisor, anybody can call themselves that. Okay. They are not all created equal, even if you're talking about certified financial planners, because folks got to make money. And this is why I tell y'all the first question you need to ask if you gonna talk to somebody and they are going to be giving you advice, you need to know how they're getting paid. Because a lot of them are getting paid by selling you things like annuities and whole life insurance. We're going to do a video. We're going to do, I don't know if it's going to be a live or a pre recorded video, but we're going to talk about this because um, that's like, that's what's the word? I don't want to call it an evil of the financial industry, but it's something I really don't like. And I don't want y'all getting caught up in that. Do you reinvest dividends? Yep, I do. Um, Book Geese says to hit the like button. And so if y'all have not done that, do it because maybe some other woman, some other black woman, because enough of y'all hit the like button, YouTube will send this to her feed and she can find out that, hey, maybe I can take control of my financial situation. Um, what would I suggest if you already have a pension? So you have a pension and you're receiving payments, or your pension is like that's the retirement you will get. Um, if that's the case, I will say I would give this advice to somebody who has a pension that they will get, but also if Social Security figures in, you got to look out for you. If there is anything that all of the struggles and the traumas I have endured in this life have taught me is you got to look out for you and you got to put you first. So that means finding a little extra somewhere so that you can save and invest. And if you get the pension and the pension is big and grand and you ain't got nothing to worry about, that's fine. You got a little extra money to have fun, to give to charity, to give to your nieces and nephews. But y'all know I am a believer in having oh shit money. So um, even if you will get a pension, I would still try and save on my own. Because, okay, take me for example. When I started teaching, I just knew I would work all the years, get my 80 points, and retire. And what if I never put any money to the side? And then I decided one day, like I did, that I was fed up and I wanted to leave. If all I had to fall back on was that teacher retirement money, that would be a problem. I think so. What do you think of investing apps like Stash? I I'm suspicious. That's the honest answer. Cause like I said, everybody's got to make money in some way. So how are they making money? If it's when they're charging you fees, how do those fees compare to traditional brokerages or discount brokerages like Vanguard, Charles Schwab, Fidelity? More likely than not, they're probably charging you more than you have to pay. So that's how I feel about that. Good advice from Alicia. Fee-based financial advisors to analyze your portfolio. Um, if you, again, you want to pay them one time upfront. You don't want them taking a percentage of your money. I read something, I think it was yesterday or today. I think it was today in a Facebook group where somebody was quoting an article that talked about if you're paying 1% of assets under management, that you're giving these people something like over the life of the investment, something like $1.5 million. Like it's a ridiculous amount of money you're giving. But I know 1% doesn't seem like a whole lot. Um, okay, I think we answered that question. Ba-ba-ba. I told y'all I was gonna bore y'all tonight, huh? Uh, Auntie Trey, I don't give investment advice. I don't give investment advice. I'm not licensed to give investment advice. If I knew somebody, or if I was, let's say, 6 months left to retirement, I would be looking at my current investments. Do I have any? How are they invested when it comes to like my risk tolerance? Are they appropriate for where I am in my journey? And by that I mean, like, if I'm getting ready to retire, my portfolio should be a bit more conservative because I am trying to hold on to the gains that I've made. If I look and, like, what portfolio? There is no portfolio, and and the retirement I'm going to receive may not be enough. I might be investing some things for growth. Depends. But remember, y'all, I can't give investment advice. F Doctor asks, when it comes to investing, is it always going to be associated with risk? What is the saying? Nothing ventured, nothing gained. There has to be some element of risk. Now, there are degrees of risk. Some things are inherently more risky, other things are less risky. So, if you are not comfortable with something that is extremely risky, look at the more conservative options. The downside, or the flip side of that, is the more conservative you get, the lower opportunity there is for growth. That's the trade-off. That's just how it is. Okay. Ba, 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 ba. Oh, do you invest in foreign companies? Stash is telling me I need to diversify a little more. I wonder what Stash is like, where Stash is basing, what data are they using to base that recommendation off of? I do have some international exposure, but here's the thing. If you are invested in a broad index fund, so something like a total stock market fund or a S&P 500, think of think about some of the largest American companies: Apple, Google, Microsoft. Are those do those country those are American companies, but they are also international companies. So if you've got that, you have some international exposure. I actually also have, I think I have a fund that is international stock market, excluding US stuff. So I have some international exposure there, because that made me feel better. Um, you know, a lot of how you invest and how you build your portfolio is about what's important to you. There is no, I can't tell you, nor should anyone fix their mouth to say this is what everybody needs to invest in, these particular stocks, these particular funds, because everybody's situation is different. But for me, being who I am, I did want more international exposure than just super large American companies. And so I did that by getting an index ETF. Because again, I'm going to keep it simple, I'm going to keep it boring. Isn't it true that the market will outgrow inflation? That is what we hope. That is what it has done historically, and we are all hoping it will continue to do that. We don't know that for 100%, and anybody who fixes their mouth to tell you this is what will happen, you need to take what they say with a grain of salt. But that is what we're hoping, and we are basing that off of decades of data. This is a good question. YA asks, do you think it's possible to retire early without investing in the market if we move out of the country and save a certain portion of your income? You're asking for my opinion. This is not advice. You just asked for my opinion. And so this is what I think. I think you can do it without investing in the market, without investing in something. No, because saving is not going to outpace inflation. So if you don't want to invest in the market, you can invest in something that will generate income for you. So that could be real estate. I don't know what other things there could be, but you need to either invest in something that will gain value over time so that you can sell it in the future to have money, or you need to invest in something that is going to generate income for you. Simply savings, I don't believe, in my opinion, as Adelia, somebody who cannot give anybody financial advice, I don't think that's enough. I think, Kiera, I think you need to join the Get Started Investing Challenge next month. In July, go to getstartedinvestingchallenge.com. Get on the wait list. You'll find out when registration is open. That's what I think you should do. Ah, okay. I'm glad you mentioned this, Greta. I mentioned Paula Pant. She has a podcast. If you go to her website, Afford Anything, all of her old blog posts are there. All of her stuff is there. She even has an Afford Anything community. But she's got a podcast. I mentioned Jay Money, but y'all told me he sold his blog. Andrew Howman, the millionaire teacher, who, especially if you are looking to live outside the US, you need to read his book, The Millionaire Expat. This is a man who, if you want it simple and you want it in a way that you know it works, read that man's book. The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins is another good book to read. Um, yeah, and so going back to the question of like, did I talk to anybody? I read those books, and really it's the same advice I think advisor or whatever they call themselves would have given me. Um, I think we covered this. Um, I I think annually, but some people do quarterly. I would not do monthly. I don't think, because you're also going to be dealing with the volatility of the market. And so what if your plan is to pull your money out monthly, and then we have some months like we did uh earlier in 2021 or whatever. I don't know. I've not dug into this that much because it turns out like I didn't have to tap into that money just yet. Uh, am I close to catching up in? Okay, I'm just getting to the part where in the conversation where I mentioned that I cooked and y'all are all astonished. I know. I am shocked that I used to be responsible for keeping people fed and alive. Blows my mind. Okay, it does blow my mind. Um, I don't want to have this conversation here, but I do want to answer this question. And I promise y'all there is a video in the works. Is life insurance considered an investment? No. And anybody who tells you it is sus. Okay? Life insurance is not an investment. You get life insurance to mitigate risk. You do not get it to grow your wealth. Okay. I'm gonna get off my soapbox right now, but a video is coming. Uh, uh, I have no idea how close I am to the end of the comments. Uh, I have a rollover IRA and a Roth 401k with Schwab. Should I make contributions to them while I am on my break? In I don't know that you can continue to contribute money to the rollover IRA because that is pre-tax money. The Roth 401k is post-tax money. And so, in theory, you could put money in there. The question becomes, for that tax year, do you have earned income? If you will not have earned income, you can't contribute to the Roth 401k. Um, lady, you're trying to sign up and it's not accepting your email address. I was going to say, I wonder if could you have previously signed up for something and then unsubscribed? I don't know. Because sometimes people's emails get on the list of like, no, you can't add them because they've already unsubscribed. Um, Okay, fractional shares. All right, so I think I'm scrolling through the last of these questions or these comments to see if there are other questions. Um, I I also see response in here about like, "Oh no, this is not boring at all. It's not sexy, it's not flashy, it's not glamorous." I feel like so much of American culture, of our culture is like I've got to like maximize things and I've got to make enough money and I've got to make all the money and I got to do it fast and that does not resonate with me. Um, I'm laughing. Is YouTube money enough to live on comfortably in CDMX? Not the YouTube money I make. If I was making that Stephanie Perry YouTube money, yes, but not the money that I make. I mean, it's nice, but no. Okay. Okay. I think we are at the end, maybe. Do you have the challenge every month? No, I do not. Because remember, I'm about relax and ease. I can't, no. Usually it's about every quarter. So, the last challenge we had was it April? Yeah, I think the last challenge we did was in April. So there is likely going to be one more after July, but I make no promises. Uh, totally, I could wake up one morning and be like, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. So chances are good that there will be another one before the end of the year. Uh, okay. So okay, I think I'm getting close down here. All right, so as I said before, in the description of this video, there are several FIRE calculators. I encourage you to check them out, to play with them, plug in some numbers to kind of see, because as Rashida told y'all on her live this past Sunday and the Sunday before, you got to do the math. Um, if you are interested in if you are a Black woman and you are interested in knowing more about investing, like you don't know anything, or you've got some stuff invested, but you don't know what's happening, the challenge is for you. getstartedinvestingchallenge.com. Now, from tonight's conversation, y'all should already know that I'm not going to teach anybody anything about trading, about options. I focus on very boring ways to do finances. Okay. But if you want to improve your broader financial literacy, develop financial confidence, the Financial Confidence Academy registration will be opening very soon. You can get on the wait list at financialconfidenceacademy.com. So yeah, y'all can hear the fire, the fire truck out there. I think that's it. I was gonna say I hope I ain't bore y'all, but most of you have said that this was not boring. But I think my parting message is this: that financial independence does not look the same for everybody. I think those of you who watch Rashida Dow's channel, we you can take the two of us. She was a high-powered attorney who has a love of the nice things in life. I was a public school teacher who just wants, time to travel. Like, financial independence can look different. And what it looks like for you, if it doesn't look like what it looks like for somebody else because they made more money than you, that does not matter. What matters is how figuring out how you can live the life that you want. That's really what's at the bottom of this. And the life that you want doesn't have to look like anybody else's. Okay. So if you're feeling like, I can't do this, I don't know enough, I don't have enough money, I'm not from the right family. I ain't have no money. I am not from the right family. I am from the wrong side of the tracks. Yet here I am. Okay. Living the life that I love in my 40s in Mexico City. All right. So, good night, everybody. And we will see y'all next time.